Hey everyone.
Hey,
Welcome.
folks.
Hey, welcome to the Poacher Reveal. So, we're very excited to be sharing this specialization. It features a mechanic that we've been wanting to do for a long time, and we finally figured out a way to do it smoothly. So, we're very excited to show you how traps are going to be making their way into the world of Evian. It allows for a totally different kind of play, a totally different take on the terrain mechanic, if you're familiar with that. And they're just generally irreverent, crazy forest hermit people. So the vibe of the poacher is just really fun. I personally really enjoy it, and they're very versatile. So I'm super excited to show them off. Um, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So the poacher is the kind of zoning character for this expansion. One of the things we try to do in every season is to add a new type of terrain, and in this season, that is poacher and their traps, which are a type of terrain that are to be placed on the ground. And there was a member of the community who kind of explained poacher as it kind of feels like a wilder that's a little less toxic, and I think that's a really accurate description. They are all about terrain and spreading their traps along the board, but they do it in a way that isn't witheringly slow. Um, they're not a bunch. They're not like playing a bunch of combo cards on themselves to make their terrain do damage. Their terrain just inherently does damage. And why don't we take a look at that? Aislinn, do you want to explain the trap terrain, or should I?
You can go ahead, but I gotta call out that Norse said, "Looking good, Aaron. You look good."
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I actually shaved, and so you're looking at a fancy lad.
Yeah,
All
go
right.
ahead and talk about trap terrain.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm gonna pull it up here. Aislinn, you're the camera woman, so go ahead and.
Mm-hmm.
So this is trap terrain. And when you trap a tile, you put a trap terrain on there. Um, so we use a slightly different wording. It's just trap target tile. Great. You put a trap terrain there. Uh, if there are two poachers, one poacher will be using one color, and the other one will be using the other color. Because with poachers and trap terrain, it matters who made them.
Mm-hmm.
Because that determines whose trap deck you use. So,
Yes.
trap terrain is very simple. It's a type of terrain. It'll replace terrain that it's placed over. And if somebody enters trap terrain, you remove it and you spring the trap. You spring a trap on them. And when you spring a trap, that's flipping the top card of the trap deck and doing what it says. So let's take a look. This unfortunate character just stepped over, and what did they get? They got the honeypot trap. Oh god, it's the bees.
The
Um,
bees.
they would take 5 damage and get poisoned twice. Pretty rough stuff for entering a single tile.
Yeah.
However, there are a lot of different types of traps, and honestly, the poacher's great, but they sometimes they mess up. In fact, some are much weaker than others. They're misfires, and they only do just a single type of control on somebody.
Yep.
Because, the poacher may be a little lackadaisical in their approach to life, and sometimes that means their traps don't fire.
Yeah,
And
they're super old or the poacher just didn't set it up properly. They're not the most reliable things in the world.
so you get to go through traps, and you just keep revealing them until you get the big one. Ye Old Marge.
Yep.
Ye Old Marge does 7 damage, makes them discard 2 cards, and then you shuffle all of your traps back into
Oops.
your trap deck, and you're ready to go again.
Oh, can we take a little bit of a longer look at Yield
Oh
Marsh?
yeah. Let me pull that up. Sorry about that, folks.
Steel Wool Guy
Mhm.
says, "This poacher stuff is cool and all, but where's the cat?" Well, unfortunately, the poacher caught the cat. It's very sad.
Yeah. Well, an actual cat update though. We recently gave them a little cat door to access our second floor patio, a little second floor balcony, and they basically just live out there now. They love it. It
Yeah.
scares us because they like to lean off the edge and take a look, but they haven't jumped yet, so here's hoping.
I think they're going to be okay. I think
I
they
think they will.
realize that it would be a very bad idea.
Yeah.
No, they're doing great. I promise. The kitties are fine. We love them
Hmm.
dearly. Yeah, so Yoamarge does a ton of damage. They have to discard cards, and then you get to shuffle your deck back together, so you can never actually run out of traps. You're always going to have more traps available to you, unlike
Yes.
relics or master arrows from the Fletcher.
I gotta say, I love how pastel pink and like goth girl the trap deck aesthetic is.
It's pretty great. It's pretty
It
great.
is.
Yeah. So
Um,
how do you get trapped terrain onto the board? Like, so we know that if we step into trapped terrain that an enemy controls, we have to spring one of the traps from their trap deck. How is that actually happening?
well, that is a great question. The Poacher's ultimate, Poach, does in fact just very simply, it's a one action, generates one power. You can either trap a tile, or you can spring target trap on an opponent near it. So, one of the things we noticed when you were placing traps is you could place all the traps in the world, but it was very hard to force your opponent to get onto them. So, what poachers can do is they can have a little bit of inevitability. They can just bring a trap on somebody nearby with their poach instead,
Yep.
which allows them to get some amount of damage out of their ultimate. It ends up working very well.
It does. You'll notice that both of these potential choices specify a target, which means they need to obey the range 2 of the card poach. So if you wanted to trap a target tile, like let's say this is my character, if I wanted to trap a tile, it would have to be within range 2 of my character. Um, and if I wanted to spring a trap, it would also have to be within range 2 of my character. So if I was here, I can't spring this trap because it's range 3, but I
But
could
you could,
spring that trap because it's range 2, which
and even though
would,
this guy is at range 3, because you're only measuring the distance to your trap,
yeah.
you're good to go.
Yep. So it's pretty versatile. It's fairly long range, even though it only says range 2. And it does have a degree of inevitability. It creates a lot of pressure on the board, even with just your ultimate alone. Plus, it is a, oops, didn't mean to do that. It is a -1/+1 ultimate, which is really, really nice for the specialization's overall power generation because it doesn't require you to have a opponent in range to generate its power, which, as we know, in Evian is super good. So Poacher is already living large right off the bat. They're doing pretty good with their ultimate and their trap mechanic. But how can they support that with the cards in their deck? Well, first of all, I can't actually remember what we put on top. So we're gonna figure it out. We have, oh yes, Snicker. Aaron, would you like to talk about Snicker?
Yeah, I can. First off, let's take a look at that art. What this is my one of my favorite pieces. You can see it on the Poacher story. It's the tagline picture. But this lady is she epitomizes the Poacher aesthetic. Um, but it's a -1/+2, and you get to look at the top card of your trap decks, the top three cards, and put them back in any order so you know what is coming. And that ends up being, I mean, usually it means you're tucking your misfire away, and if you're lucky or a little lucky, you even can guarantee that yield marges next. Also, it's a -1/+2, so it's already a great effect.
Yeah,
Snicker is such a satisfying card to play.
it's really good. And I mean, like, you can do some statistical math, right? So, like, be like, how much damage on average does a trap do to me from the trap deck? But then when a poacher plays Snicker, that damage threat from the traps raises significantly because they're obviously going to put all the misfires they find on the bottom of their deck. They don't want to hit those. And they're going to keep all of the really good traps on top. So you're going to feel a lot more threatened when a poacher Snickers.
Yes, absolutely. Um, a lot of the poacher cards do allow you to make some pretty neat plays. And one of the ways to do that is they have some of the best. I think they have some of the best access to movement. Would you say that's true, Aislyn?
Yeah, they have some very, very powerful access to movement, which I think we might be seeing next.
I think so. So yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at the top one
Yes,
there.
there it is. Game
Yeah.
Trail.
So one of the really cool things about Poacher, compared to Wilder, which if you're looking at Poacher, kind of got to look at Wilder and maybe a little bit of Terrain Winterborn to see what it's doing, and Enchantress. This style of terrain character, though, it's leaning into one of the Yeoman's things, which is being able to move. Game Trail's a 0-1, travel to another target tile, draw a card. Like, holy moly, that's an incredible effect. The Poacher really cares about the board and is never sitting still. They are really squirrely. They're like a
Oh, yeah.
trying to catch them is like trying to catch a goose.
Oh,
Their
I wonder why
defense
you compare them to a goose.
is running away. And yeah, no, this is a really fun way to do control because they just lay out their traps and then they just piss off to the other side of them and make you have to deal with them.
Absolutely.
Um,
They don't
but they're
just run away, though. They
exactly.
have some, if you're being particularly obstinate about stepping into their traps, they can make your life a little difficult on their own without any help from you with a card like Rope Arrow. So not only can they run away and put distance between you and them and make the board far more frustrating for you to navigate, but they can also just straight up throw you into their traps. They can throw you into their tile modifiers. They can just throw you around however they want. Apparently
And
the poachers figured out a way to invent an arrow that has generates enough force that they can just pull you with it. It's very impressive.
what's really wild is that they could push you with the rope arrow. Like maybe
Yeah,
they
that
they
part's pretty
wrap
crazy.
it around a tree or something. Um, physics aside, rope arrow, like, so you can like snicker turn one. See if you see a yield marge, put that on top. You rope arrow somebody into your trap, and that's what 12 damage for one action and one power there.
It's brutal.
Also, they discard two cards. It is an incredible effect.
Yeah.
Um,
That's I mean
rope
that's
arrow.
the thing about like the poacher and the trap deck in general is that like it can be so explosive. I mean literally with yield marges explosion, or it can just be completely like inert, right? Like someone can be really nervous and be like, "Oh man, should I step on the trap or should I not?" And then like they take the risk, and it could either be like a game-ending play for them or it could basically do nothing. Um,
Sharkbait says we don't need physics where we're going, and you're absolutely right. The poacher didn't read those. He only follows the laws he can read,
yeah, yeah,
and the laws of physics ain't one of them.
that's true. So, beyond their ability to manipulate the trap deck, beyond their ability to manipulate movement, they can also just get significant payoff and build up for their traps. And one of the cards that they can use to do that is, pretty sure this is Corner. Yes. Excellent. So most of the time, cards that generate terrain, and remember, traps are considered terrain, which means that they'll also synergize with all of your other cards that care about terrain, which is pretty cool. Um, Most cards that generate terrain only do it in instances of one, maybe two. Corner just puts 3 traps around them, which is pretty amazing if you need to generate terrain. It's also just generally amazing to make the board really frustrating and challenging for them to navigate. Plus, it disarms them. So, like, if you were next to them or, you just didn't want them to attack in general, the disarms got you covered.
Yeah. So why might you want to put 3 traps near them, Aislinn?
Oh yeah, that's a good question because like what are you going to do with those extra two traps they don't even want to step on? Like
You can only spring them one at a time, right?
yeah. Right. Wrong. We don't have art, so bear with us, but this is the big payoff for Poacher. If you manage to get a bunch of traps around them and they haven't sprung them for any reason, at max, this could trigger 5 traps on someone, which is half your entire trap deck, which is going to deal probably upwards of 15 to 20 damage to them for -1, -2.
Yeah.
Um,
Minus and minus two plus the cost of making the traps. But
plus the cost of making the trap. But the poacher doesn't think about that, right?
no,
All they care about is the big fireworks.
yeah, this card is crazy, and it really, the very existence of Ambuscade makes being near traps stressful because even like the baseline, you say you end your turn near a trap, if they on their turn play poach to trap a tile near you and then just play Ambuscade, that's two traps. That's already like, you know, 6 to 8 damage or so.
Yeah, on average. Although,
It could be a misfire, but
yeah, and again, that's the thing about poacher. They're just fairly random. So you could corner someone to put three traps near them, and then you could ambuscade to trigger all three of those traps. Those could all be misfires. And then that would be really bad. Or they could all be giant fireworks and just blow them to hell and back. So, if you're okay with that kind of uncertainty, poacher's for you. It can go absolutely
absolutely.
haywire or it can go absolutely wonderfully. Yes, Shark, it
Well,
is kind of like an invoker with extra steps.
yeah, but maybe with Poacher you'd actually find those steps.
Oof. Call out to the Friday Night Evian game, huh? Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, so do we wanna take a look at the red green trait
We
for this?
do, yeah. So there are five more poacher cards. You might see some of them in the game we're going to play immediately after this reveal, but we're also going to be putting
Hmm.
poacher on Tabletop Simulator and the website for you to review all their cards today. So you'll be
Steel
able
Wool
to play
Guy
them.
asks, are traps just in the Poacher spec? Right now, yes.
Hmm.
If you found a way to add a card that traps tiles in another archetype, you would get access to the trap deck. Right now, that is only in Poacher.
Yeah. And we're not ruling out the possibility of creating cards that aren't in the poacher that create traps, but currently that does not exist.
Yeah.
It's a
Eh,
possibility in the future.
it's been thrown around in um, like Yeoman, for example. We had thought about adding it. We ultimately decided Yeoman already had poison and luck and um, what was the other one?
Precise.
Or is it and precise?
Yeah,
So we decided they were getting a little busy, so we shaved off that. So
for
right
sure.
now it's just in Poacher. It's working pretty well. So
Oh, yeah, for sure. Something else I want to point out really quick is that something like Ambuscade says spring each trap near target opponent on them. And if you read that at face value, that would mean that you would spring your traps and anyone else's traps on them. That is not the case. The way that springing as a verb is defined in the rules of Evian is that you can only spring traps you control. So
yep.
if three of the tiles surrounding them were traps that you control and two of them were traps they control, you're only going to spring the three you control. Just to
And
clarify that.
I guess the other clarification I'd like to know, because I'd like to say, because I know I'm going to be asked it, is what happens if I spell steal a card that traps a tile? Well, um, if there is only one trap deck in the game, traps that your opponent, all traps will draw from that, even your opponent. So if I spell stole a poacher's corner, and then I cornered them and they sprung a trap, they would draw from their own trap deck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's show off the red green trait before we jump into our game.
Oh, very excited about this one.
Perfect. All right, Aaron, would you like to tell us about Stalker?
Stalker. For starters, look at that creepy guy. He's he's got a look to him. Um,
Yes, he does.
yeah, so 3 times per game, after you create terrain, you can expend a charge to travel to a nearby tile. Um, you know, as a side note, Aislyn, I don't think this needs to have range 1. We can just make this say travel 1 tile.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, you travel 1 tile every time you make terrain, which it means in the early game, Poacher is an absolute menace to catch because they're placing their traps, sneaking up to creeping up, then they start placing them and going back. It's a whole thing. This is basically turning Poach into not only are you making a trap, but you are also, I mean, you're shifting. It's an excellent. It's kind of like three free actions almost for a hypermobile terrain class.
Kind of. And I mean, we try to add new means of utilizing and synergizing with terrain in each season.
Hmm.
And this is a really cool card that accomplishes that. So you don't have to use Stalker with just trapped terrain. You can also utilize it with difficult terrain or enchanted terrain from our first two seasons, and any
Yep.
kind of terrain we make in the future.
Yeah, you
Uh,
could definitely make a stalker enchantress deck that the first three turns when they enchant, they just get to move on to their their enchanted terrain and gain that power instantly.
yep, yep. Oh yeah, and you can run Stalker with Enchantress.
Yep.
Nice.
Actually, I don't know if I've made that deck yet. I don't think I've made that deck. I should try that. That
Yeah,
sounds sick.
it sounds good. All right. Well, thank you
Kind of creepy
guys.
though, a stalking enchantress just like lurking around in the bushes, looking around corners.
What's that archetype of anime character? The character that like loves another character really intensely in like a really toxic way.
Are you thinking about Tsundere?
No, not
Or
Tsundere.
y
Um, Toga? Is that what it's called?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
You don't know what I'm talking about?
Well, this is now the anime stream, folks. All right. Well, maybe
Ah,
some people in the chat
yeah,
are
yeah.
weak and know this toga archetype that you're talking about that's about toxic relationships. I have no idea
Yandere.
what. Yeah,
Yandere.
yeah. Okay, it is yandere. I was wondering if
Yeah,
that's where you were going
yandere.
with it.
That's what I'm trying to say, yeah. You'd be a yandere if you were an stalker enchantress, I guess.
Wow, I guess so.
Yeah, just
Well,
needed to ruin that for you
this
really
took a
quick.
weird direction.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay, yeah. So, do you want to maybe play a game of Evian?
Yes. Thank you guys for
Great.
watching our Poacher Reveal slash anime discussion video. And we will see you in the Poacher gameplay.